I don't think I walk with it.
Pedro has a copy.
Mr. Clerk,
You have a copy there? I was sure that you had it there. You have to move on the point of privilege.
yeah. Before the suspension, we had the vociferous objection of Senators Franklin, Tate, and less vociferous that of Senator Maynard, objecting to the presence of Senator Lisa Cummings into the chambers, coming into the chambers. The objection raises an issue of privilege. And much as I respect the views of the senators objecting to her presence, I have no certificate from them. And so armed as I am with the certificate of the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Kenneth George, and with no opposing evidence before me, I propose being guided by Dr. Kenneth George's letter to the effect that Senator Cummings' presence represents no threat. As I said, this raises an issue of privilege. I have to rule on it, and I rule that she will be allowed to come in either to join us in the debate or for the more limited purpose of casting her vote at the appropriate time. And that is my ruling.
Resumption of public business and the debate.
So she can either come in now or later.
But she don't speak.
Where is she though?
Apparently.
Mr. President, permission to be excused. I think this is an abomination, Mr. President.
So, resumption of the debate on order number 2.
Mr. President, this is an interesting thing. I prepared myself to speak on the Public Life and Integrity Bill, but I feel compelled, Mr. President, to preface my remarks with a bit of context as to what happened here today. I only have 30 minutes, I'm reminded. Mr. President, we have a number of bills that are presently on our order papers. We have a number of items that have already been debated in the other place and are yet to come to this place. We have heard, and certainly over the last 4 or 5 months or so, we have been battling with the challenges of the COVID pandemic. Mr. President, this has not been an easy time. Mr. President, over the last 4 months, in a previous life, I happened to be chairman of the Bridgetown Port. Mr. President, we saw through the process of, through February 27th up until the time I left the port, 22,000 crew members being repatriated. I was present in the port for many of them. Mr. President, many people do not know and they have not seen the instances where we have interacted in the course of public duty. We have had instances in the port, Mr. President, where passengers were being repatriated and were struggling, and we briefly facilitated them. Mr. President, we have seen in more than one instance, and many people in the public would not have seen, when Barbadian sailors, crew members returned home, and I have gone to the Bridgetown Port on many occasions, and in the same way that we did last Thursday, masked up, socially distant, and maintaining all of the protocols that are set in place by the government, I did not find myself unwelcome in any space, and I did not have a COVID-19 test, Mr. President. I did not find myself unwelcome after processing and treating to over 22,000 crew members and sitting in this place, unwelcome, scorned, facing a stigma, and I did not have a COVID-19 test, negative test. I did not have one, Mr. President. But here it is that we are talking about how we use the privilege of this space. I today have had a COVID-19 test, the first one. I didn't have one in February. I didn't have one in March. I didn't have one in April. I didn't have one in May, and I didn't have one in June. And my risk exposure, low though it may have been, was identical for all of those times, Mr. President. And I walked in and out of this chamber among my colleagues without scorn or ridicule. But today it has prompted a walkout with a COVID-19 test. I shudder to think, Mr. President, what a person who has actually had COVID is faced with in this country today. I shudder to think what a person who has gone through the trials of being in Harson's Point, in Paragon, in any of our facilities, who have come back with a positive test, what they are facing in this country. And if this is what we are dealing with a COVID-19 test, negative test, 7 days in quarantine because we met on Thursday last week. Today is now the 7th day, having stayed isolated in my home for all this time. If this is what we are dealing with among the leadership of a country, that we are facing a pandemic together, then I think there is no hope for those who are coming back with COVID positive tests and attempting to treat to this country in a meaningful way. It is a most unfortunate and despicable display, Mr. President, if I may say so myself. But that is not why I'm here. It happened to be because I am here. But I am here, Mr. President, and I am here to do the people's business as I was during COVID, when my dogs were home just like snow, and I would have liked to be there with them. I was here too. Today, with the COVID-19 test, I am here too, Mr. President, because I am here for the people's business. That is what I have been appointed to do, and that is what I will do. I don't have the time, Mr. President, for all the political antics. I don't have the time for the independent politicking. I don't have the interest, Mr. President, in grandstanding and trying to grab the headlines, because the people's business still has to be done. And today, the business that the people of Barbados have deemed must be done is the passage of the Integrity and Public Life Bill. Now, let's start with the Public Life Bill, Mr. President, and I confess that I don't have my notes in front of me with all the back and forth, so I'm going to speak from the top of my head. So you forgive me if I don't have everything correct. Mr. President, I happen to be one of the members of this place that sat on the Select Committee on Integrity and Public Life. I sat on the committee, the Select Committee on Integrity and Public Life, for the reason that before I came to government, I was a member of a group called the Integrity Group of Barbados. These are things to which I hold dear. I became a member of the Integrity Group of Barbados, Mr. President, because in a previous life, when I was a young diplomatic officer, I was party to the development of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, and I was an officer in Washington, D.C. when the Inter-American Convention Against Corruption was developed and passed. So these are issues that are important to me. So I have no intention with a COVID-19 test, and after 7 days, COVID-19 negative test, and after 7 days in quarantine, to miss an opportunity to be a part of the bill that I have worked so hard to be a part of in this administration, when we have seen so many incarnations go before it, Mr. President, when it was not passed, for all kinds of reasons. And there are a number of things which are unfortunate. The position by those across the room has been unfortunate. What they are saying to the people of Barbados who are COVID positive, not even those who are negative, is that this is the stigma that they can expect from anyone. What they are saying, as they have used their privilege of this space to say, is that we want to be exempted. Take us out from the legislation. No, 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 we are independent. No, we are opposition. We don't want to be included. We want to be exempted. They have used the opportunity of privilege to try to claim an exemption for themselves, while attempting to use the same argument, notwithstanding a medical document, to say that I cannot be in this place. What a disgrace that is. In addition, Mr. President, I want to speak about the notion of the public service. In the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, when it speaks about integrity and public life, it makes specific reference to the importance of including the public sector. In the United Nations Convention on Corruption, it speaks to codes of conduct and codes of ethics that may be in place in different jurisdictions that include the public sector. It makes reference, Mr. President, in subsequent communication that came in to the same Select Committee by the same United Nations United Nations Commission Against Drugs and Corruption, UNDAC. They wrote to the Select Committee, and they referenced the Commission. They referenced the convention, Mr. President. And in the convention, they talked about the model legislation, which also should take into account the various categories of public servants that could and should be incorporated into development of the legislation in each jurisdiction. And they gave a template. They gave model legislation. And in all incarnations, this legislation included the public sector, and it made no differentiation between senators and members of parliament for any shade, color, class, creed, and certainly no political or non-political affiliation. They were all included. We were all included. The submission to the Select Committee also went on to identify specific pieces of legislation throughout the Caribbean that were illustrative of which public servants, which categories of public servants should be included. And all of the submissions that were made by the others by my colleagues on the other side were included in various forms of legislation all throughout the Caribbean. where the legislation exists. Mr. President, we had a discussion also around the inclusion of magistrates versus judges. And in the Bar Association submission, they spoke to this matter. The Bar Association submission made reference to the fact that in Trinidad and Tobago, there was a case being brought before the courts that spoke to the question of whether magistrates and judges should be included. And they made the determination that they should be excluded, and there's a reason for that. In that jurisdiction, the way in which magistrates and judges are appointed is different than how it's done here in Barbados. In Barbados, our constitution is appointing a judge. That is not the same for a magistrate. A judge's role is constitutionally guaranteed, and therefore their terms and conditions of service are also constitutionally guaranteed and cannot be altered in the same way that we can for any other category of persons. For magistrates, you could be a magistrate today, you could be a magistrate, you couldn't be a magistrate tomorrow. There is no constitutional guarantee around the magistrate, and it is on that basis, Mr. President, that the decision was made that magistrates will be included in the extensive list in Schedule 2, and on the other hand, additional legislation specific to the role of judges would be brought to address the importance of having them captured in that net. The other issue that was raised, Mr. President, was that of whistleblower protection. Now, there was a clause in the draft bill that spoke to whistleblower protection. Now, Mr. President, this is a critical issue, and it's one of the things that was important throughout the text and throughout the course of the Select Committee. It was so important, Mr. President, that the Integrity Group of Barbados and ICAB, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Barbados, spoke specifically to it in their submissions to the Select Committee. And in both instances, they felt that additional protections needed to be made. And so the Office of the Attorney General, in their wisdom, agreed. And it is for that purpose that the entire section on whistleblowing protection has now been taken out, and rather than being limited to one or two clauses within the body of the Integrity Bill, it is now being committed to an entire body of legislation all on its own because it is so important. And why is it so important, Mr. President? Because the Transparency International has a template. If you looked at Transparency International templates, they have a toolkit. And they outline what integrity legislation should look like from country to country. They look at the categories that should be included, Mr. President. They talk about the kinds of barometers that should be set and the measures that should be in place. And in all instances, so far I've spoken about the Bar Association, I've spoken about ICAB, I've spoken about IGB. Those have all spoken to substantive issues. I've spoken about the United Nations Office on Crime and Corruption. Those have all supported the positions that have been reflected now in the new bill. But equally so, Mr. President, we have a situation where they made the determination that the bill itself not only needed to treat to whistleblowing on its own, but that the corruption bill that I believe Senator Haynes made reference to it earlier, which had been passed and never been proclaimed, also needed to be updated. And that is based on the same Transparency International and the toolkits that are there, which speak to the importance of ensuring coverage across all the areas that are going to lead to corruption on the one hand, and the absence of integrity in public life on the other hand. The IGB toolkit is there, the Transparency International toolkit is there for all to see. And there was a point that was raised, Mr. President, specific to the importance of the political class. Now, let's spend a moment on that. I believe it was in Senator Haynes' submission today, and in one of the colleagues' submissions last week. We spoke about the importance of it taking two hands to clap and the role of other parties in contracting. While you may have a politician who is a minister, who is sitting in a seat of responsibility and accountable to the public by way of election or appointment, it is the persons who have financial responsibility or the chief accounting officer, and that is no politician, Mr. President. That is no politician, that is a public official. And certainly if we read, and again, Senator Haynes made reference to it today, the reports of the Office of the Auditor General in perpetuity speak to matters which are specific to the functioning of institutions. In fact, Mr. President, in this same space, not too long ago, under the auspices of the Public Accounts Committee, we spent a considerable amount of time dealing with an issue that was raised by Senator Tate, incidentally, when she mentioned the Transport Board today as one of the entities that fall on the schedule too. Yes, we had a chairman, yes, who was buying workbenches, not once or twice, in the amount of $14,000 for the Barbados Transport Board. How is that? I've been a chairman. I can't imagine why I would incur such an expense on behalf of the government of Barbados or the entity that I chaired. That is an outrageous thing to have happen. You have invoices that were being paid, not once, not twice, but more than once. You have buses that were disappearing. BM 500 still cannot be found. Where is it? Who can account for what happened to that transaction? That did not happen with a political class. That did not happen with a politician. That happened with a public official. Should we not hold people accountable? Should we not hold the people accountable who sign problematic contracts? Should we not hold them accountable when they take money from the government purse because there's a direct benefit to them and they can peddle either in influence or for the purpose of getting a direct benefit? Should we not hold them accountable? No, we've already spoken about Clause 19. In particular, Clause 19.3, I believe it was Senator Moore in her last submission, and that will be dealt with, I believe, in a wrap-up by the Leader of Government Business. But yes, Barbados is a serious place, and I agree with that. Yes, Barbados is a serious place where rumors are going to abound no matter what you do, and I agree with that. That is true. But does that mean that we do not do the right things for the wrong reasons? Does that mean that we don't create systems and put them in place because people are going to misuse them and misabuse them? Don't we drive when there are accidents every day? When I go out there, I'm sure there's going to be a ZR that's doing the wrong thing. Am I not going to go outside anymore, Mr. President? So because Barbados is a serious place, and because rumors abound, and because people share information that they're not supposed to share, what are we to do, Mr. President? Not hold people accountable so we can have more incarnations of the Barbados Transport Board, so we can have more incarnations of the reports that have been sent out by the Barbados Water Authority, $1 billion in contracts that were never subjected to transparency. Is that what Senator Haynes said earlier today? Is that what we should do? Should I not come here today, Mr. President, with my COVID-19 test so that people who want to exempt themselves from the bill can stand up and vote no against it? Is that what we should do? COVID negative test. Because people have an issue. Should we not, I believe Senator Adams said it last week, Senator Adams said, you don't have to have a position of privilege or contracting to use your influence. You could choose to block a bill because they represent your clients and your constituent base that will pay your fees. That is called corruption too. That is what we should call corruption. Choosing not to vote on a bill because it does not benefit your people. That is called corruption. That is lacking in integrity. Stand up and face that. That is why we're facing a walkout today, Mr. President. Nothing to do with my COVID-19 test. COVID-19 test, let it be very clear. People are using their privilege and their access and their influence to curry favor with those that they represent. And they have done so in a disgraceful manner today, Mr. President. But that notwithstanding, I am here and I'm giving my vote and my full support to this bill on integrity in public life. And with those few words, Mr. President, I'm obliged.
Mr. President, I was caught off guard.
We figured that to get the mess out of the senator, we may have to exclude her from time to time.
She landed quite suddenly. Mr. President, as I rise to wrap up in this debate, regrettable that most of the other honorable members on the other side are not in the seats at this point in time. There were a lot of matters raised by them, and I know that our honorable colleagues on this side have responded to some of them. I know that in a number of issues were raised. The issue of the inclusion of public servants has been dealt with. And I believe this was only raised in the context by the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, who is keen on trying to secure some base or foundation within his union, within the public sector. And I think that is his own fight that he has to deal with. Senator Nurse spoke about other legislation that is necessary, and I reminded him that this very chamber debated and passed the Proceeds and Instrumentalities of Crime Act in April last year. And I heard him saying that we needed this sort of legislation when we see people getting wealthy and if we suspect they're involved in crime. So he needs to be reminded that this has already been dealt with 1 year ago. A number of honorable members were concerned about clause 19 in the matter of the register of interest, and this was discussed, and these I will propose when we come to committee that sections 19.1, clause 19.1 and 19.3 be deleted, so that 2 would become just 19. So that will be dealt with in terms of that. I said in my initial presentation that there's draft anti-corruption legislation. A number of honorable members made reference to the need to have it. It is being prepared. In addition, the whistleblower legislation, I also said then that it is being prepared, is drafted, is in draft form, I've been told. I am not going to speak to the issues if there should have been a public consultation or not. I believe the select committee dealt with that during its settings, when it met. Mr. President, this has been a very eventful evening, surprising for me, very surprising in terms of responses, with all that we have been told in recent weeks about COVID, with all of the government information service putting out their, with all of the ads, with all of the protocols. And I mean, for me, it has been depressing, not in terms of the reaction, but it shows me if I can expect this sort of reaction from persons within this honorable chamber. I would be very worried about the reaction if people were thinking the same way in other parts of Barbados, because in this chamber, you expect certain people to behave in a certain manner, and it was not displayed this evening. Mr. President, in these circumstances, however, I beg to move that this bill be now read a second time.
Question is that the bill under consideration and discussion be now read a second time. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg that your honor do not leave the chair, and the honorable chamber resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
Question is that I do not leave the chair, and the Senate resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate for the further consideration of the bill in detail. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it, and we are now in committee.
Be it, Pedro.
The Senate is now in committee.
Part 1, clauses 1 and 2.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 1, clauses 1 and 2 stand part.
The question is that Part 1, clauses 1 and 2 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 2, clauses 3 to 10.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 2, clauses 3 to 10 stand part.
The question is that Part 2, clauses 3 to 10 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 3, clauses 11 to 17.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 3, clauses 11 to 17 stand part.
The question is that Part 3, clauses 11 to 17 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 4, clause 18.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 4, clause 18 stand part.
The question is that Part 4, clause 18 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 19 of the said Part 4.
Mr. Chairman, as I said earlier, in clause 19, I'm proposing that 19.1 and 19.3 be deleted so that 19.2 would just become 19. And I beg to move that clause 19 as amended stand part.
The question is that clause 19 as amended stand part, that is the removal of clause 19.1 and clause 19.3, leaving clause 2 as clause 19. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 4, clauses 20 to 22.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that part 4, clauses 20 to 22 stand part.
The question is that part 4, clauses 20 to 22 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 5, clauses 23 and 24.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that part 5, clauses 23 to 24 stand part.
The question is that part 5, clauses 23 and 24 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 6, clauses 25 to 30.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that part 6, clauses 25 to 30 stand part.
The question is that part 6, clauses 25 to 30 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 7, clauses 31 to 40.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that part 7, clauses 31 to 40 stand part.
The question is that part 7, clauses 31 to 40 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 8, clauses 41 to 49.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that part 8, clauses 41 to 49 stand part.
The question is that part 8, clauses 41 to 49 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 9, clauses 50 to 58.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that part 9, clauses 50 to 58 stand part.
The question is that part 9, clauses 50 to 58 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
First schedule.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that the first schedule be the first schedule to this bill.
The question is that the first schedule be the first schedule to the bill. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Second schedule.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that the second schedule be the second schedule to the bill.
The question is that the second schedule be the second schedule to the bill. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Third schedule.
Chairman, I beg to move that the third schedule be the third schedule to the bill.
The question is that the third schedule be the third schedule to the bill. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Fourth schedule.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that the fourth schedule be the fourth schedule to the bill.
The question is that the fourth schedule be the fourth schedule to the bill. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Fifth schedule.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that the fifth schedule be the fifth schedule to the bill.
The question is that the fifth schedule be the fifth schedule to the bill. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I do beg to move that you do not report His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee.
With amendment.
With one bill
With
amendments to the.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill with amendments in committee. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported to me the passage of the bill under consideration with amendments in committee.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be now read a third time.
Question is that the bill under consideration be now read a third time. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. I think the ayes have it.
Passing in second. Passing in second.
I need it there. Mr. President, I beg that this bill do now pass and be cited as the Integrity in Public Life Act 2020.
Question is that the bill under consideration do now pass and be so cited.
Mr. President, as you are aware, this bill is supposed to be passed in accordance with Section 49(2) of the Constitution. Therefore, we require a voice vote. The marshal will just check to see if there are any senators in the precincts. We begin, sir. Senator Walker.
Aye.
Senator McConney.
Aye.
Senator Cummins.
Aye.
Senator Dr. Springer.
Aye.
Senator Dr. Holder.
Aye.
Senator Sands.
Aye.
Senator Grant. Senator Dr. Haynes.
Aye.
Senator Adams.
Aye.
Your Honor, Senator Greenwich. Senator Moore.
Abstain.
Senator Rogers.
Abstain.
Mr. President, the results of the division: 10 honorable senators voted in favor of the bill. There were 2 abstentions. And just for clarity, let me read what a part of Section 49(2) of the Constitution says. Any bill that is passed in accordance with this section shall not be passed in either house unless at the final voting thereon in the House, and House here means Senate, it is supported by votes of not less than 2/3 of all the members of the House. Now, 2/3 of the members of this House will be 14 members. And we have not reached the threshold of 14, and therefore this bill has been defeated, sir.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this sitting be suspended for 15 minutes. Thank you.
Question is that this sitting be now suspended until 5 o'clock. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. I think the ayes have it, and we are under suspension until 5 o'clock.